The chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel glittered like frozen stars, their crystal drops reflecting the champagne light of New York's most powerful night. Every corner of the grand ballroom whispered wealth, Cartier diamonds, Dior gowns, and the low hum of investors discussing billion-dollar mergers. At the center of it all stood Adrien Vaughn, a man whose name could move stock prices with a single sentence. His smile tonight, however, wasn't for the cameras. It was for cruelty. Across the marble floor, Elena Vaughn approached him. His wife, 5 months pregnant, wrapped in a soft silver gown that clung gently to her swelling belly. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from heartbreak. For weeks she'd heard rumors. Adrien's affair with a young socialite named Clara DeWitt, whispers of lavish gifts and secret weekends in the Hamptons. But she'd hoped, foolishly, that tonight would be different. It was their anniversary gala, a celebration of the empire they had built together. When Adrien noticed her, the air seemed to crack. His blue eyes, once warm, were now cold steel. "What are you doing here, Elena?" he hissed through clenched teeth, his hand tightening around his glass of champagne. "This is my home. My name is still on the company," she whispered, voice breaking. "Please, Adrien, we need to talk." The guests turned, phones lifted discreetly. The orchestra's melody faltered into uneasy silence. Adrien laughed, a sound sharp enough to slice glass. "Talk? You embarrassed me in front of my board, and now you show up here? You pathetic." His words caught when she reached for his arm, pleading. "Please don't kick me. I'm pregnant," she whispered, tears glistening under the golden light. For one horrifying moment, everyone froze. Then Adrien shoved her away. The world slowed, the crash of crystal, a scream, the metallic scent of spilled champagne. Elena hit the marble floor, her silver clutch skidding across the tiles. Red spread beneath her like a blooming rose. The room erupted in gasps and flashing lights. Dozens of iPhones captured the scene, the billionaire's cruelty immortalized in pixels. Adrien stood over her, chest heaving, his jaw tight with rage. "You brought this on yourself," he spat before storming off toward the private elevator. Security rushed in, a waiter dropped his tray. Someone screamed, "Call an ambulance!" Elena's vision blurred. The chandelier above her fractured into 1,000 glittering pieces. She reached out weakly, whispering, "My baby." Sirens wailed outside on Fifth Avenue, blending with the fading music and the murmurs of scandal. But as the elevator doors closed behind Adrien Vaughn, 3 powerful figures in the crowd exchanged looks, men and women who had once been his allies. And one of them said quietly, "He just destroyed the wrong woman." The hospital lights were too bright, too clean, too merciless. Elena woke to the antiseptic sting of bleach and the soft beep of a heart monitor. Her fingers brushed across the sterile sheets, reaching for something that wasn't there. The silence told her the truth before the doctor did. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vaughn," the woman said gently, her voice breaking the fragile quiet. "We couldn't save the baby." For a moment, Elena didn't breathe. The words echoed inside her skull, hollow and infinite. Her hands went to her belly, once warm, now empty. A sound left her throat, not quite a cry, not quite a scream, but something deeper, rawer. When she opened her eyes again, Adrien wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Instead, his lawyer stood in the doorway, holding a folder. "Mr. Vaughn asked me to deliver this," he said coldly, placing the papers on her bedside table. "He wishes you the best." Divorce documents. Her wedding ring felt like ice. By dusk, she was discharged. Not because she was ready, but because Adrien had arranged it. He'd called ahead, insisting the media shouldn't see her looking unstable. He cared only for damage control. Outside, the city rained like it was mourning for her. The streets of Manhattan glistened with reflections. Dior signs, Fifth Avenue lights, yellow cabs slicing through puddles. Elena walked without knowing where she was going. Her hospital bracelet still clung to her wrist like a shackle. She stopped before their penthouse at Park Avenue. 2 security guards blocked the entrance. "Mrs. Vaughn?" one asked, his expression tight. "Mr. Vaughn said you're no longer allowed entry." Her heart froze. "This is my home," she whispered. "Not anymore, ma'am." She stood there for a long moment as the rain soaked through her thin coat. Her hair clung to her face, her mascara bleeding down her cheeks like war paint. Behind the glass doors, she could see the lobby chandelier, the same one she'd picked out when they first married. Now it felt like it belonged to another lifetime. A black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the curb. She turned away, thinking it was Adrien. Instead, a tall man in a charcoal coat stepped out, holding an umbrella. His voice was deep, steady, almost familiar. Elena? Through the haze, she recognized him. Nathan Cross, CEO of Crossbuild Group, Adrien's former business partner. His gray eyes softened when he saw her trembling. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "He doesn't deserve to see you like this." She tried to smile, but her lips quivered. "I don't know where to go." Nathan hesitated for a moment, then reached out, the umbrella tilting to shield her from the storm. "Come with me," he said simply. "You saved my company once. Let me return the favor." Inside the car, the soft hum of the heater filled the silence. Elena stared out the window, watching Manhattan blur into streaks of gold and rain. Her reflection looked like a stranger's, pale, hollow, broken. Nathan's voice was calm, deliberate. "You're stronger than you think. Adrien may have power, but he doesn't have allies anymore." Elena turned toward him, confusion flickering through her tears. "What do you mean?" He met her gaze with quiet certainty. "Adrien Vaughn has made enemies in every corner of this city, as if some of them used to be his closest friends." Outside, lightning split the sky over the Hudson River. Elena's fingers tightened around her ring, the last symbol of a life that no longer existed. "I've lost everything," she whispered. Nathan looked ahead, voice low but steady. "No," he said. "You've just been reborn." The hum of the Mercedes S-Class was soft, almost hypnotic, as it glided through the slick streets of Manhattan. Rain tapped against the tinted glass like a quiet metronome. Elena sat in silence, clutching the edge of her hospital blanket. Every flicker of city light on the window reminded her of a life that had just ended. Her marriage, her child, her sense of safety. Across from her, Nathan Cross watched without speaking. He'd seen power destroy people before, but never like this. Once Adrien Vaughn had been his friend, the kind who toasted victories with Macallan 25 and handshakes worth millions, until greed poisoned everything. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath the Ritz-Carlton residences, a fortress of glass and stone overlooking Central Park. Nathan's driver, a quiet man in gloves, stepped out and opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and steel. "Come inside," Nathan said gently. Elena hesitated. "I can't stay here. The press will." "No one will find you here," he interrupted, his voice steady but kind. "This place isn't in your name or mine. It's neutral ground." The elevator rose in silence, the numbers blinking softly until it opened to a penthouse bathed in amber light. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city glittering like scattered diamonds. On the marble counter rested a Mont Blanc pen, an untouched glass of scotch, and an unopened MacBook Pro, the symbols of a life built on precision and control. Nathan took off his coat and gestured toward the couch. "You need rest." Elena sank into the cushions, staring blankly at the city. "He threw me away like nothing," she murmured. "After everything I gave him, after all we built together." Nathan poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "You built him," he said quietly. "The empire he flaunts, the contacts, the investors, they came because of your eye for design, your grace. People believed in him because they trusted you." She blinked, stunned. "You knew?" He nodded. "I saw it years ago. The way he'd hide your work under his name. But you never spoke, never demanded credit." A bitter smile crossed her lips. "That's what wives do, right? We support, we forgive, we disappear." Nathan leaned forward, his expression firm. "No, that's what he made you believe." Elena looked away, her reflection flickering against the glass like a ghost of the woman she once was. The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the city below. Finally she whispered, "Why are you helping me, Nathan?" He took a slow breath. "Because 5 years ago, when my company was on the verge of collapse, you were the one who convinced Adrien not to pull out. You told him I deserved a chance. Without that, Crossbuild would be gone. You saved me then. Now it's my turn." Her eyes filled again, not with sorrow this time, but disbelief. "And what do you expect from me?" Nathan met her gaze, unwavering. "Nothing. Just promise me one thing." She frowned softly. "What? When you decide to fight back, and you will, call me first." Elena's breath caught. The word fight felt foreign, almost forbidden. But in Nathan's eyes she saw no pity, only faith. A spark she hadn't felt in years flickered inside her chest. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline. The storm that had drowned her now felt like a cleansing fire. She rose slowly, crossing the room to the window. Her reflection merged with the city lights, fragile yet unbroken. "I don't even know where to begin," she whispered. Nathan's voice came from behind her, low and certain. "You start," he said, "by remembering who you were before he made you forget." Morning broke over Manhattan like liquid gold spilling between the towers. From the glass walls of the Ritz-Carlton residences, the city shimmered, taxis like fireflies, steam rising from the streets below, the hum of life continuing as if her world hadn't ended. Elena stood barefoot near the window, wrapped in a gray cashmere blanket. She hadn't really slept. Her reflection stared back at her, pale, bruised, but alive. For the first time since the gala, there was silence. No cameras, no whispers, just the low thrum of the city and the distant echo of her heartbeat. Nathan entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of Starbucks coffee, steam curling from the lids. "I figured caffeine's better than pity," he said, placing one beside her. Elena almost smiled. "Thank you." He studied her for a moment. "You don't have to talk yet, just breathe." But breathing hurt. Every inhale brought memories she wished she could bury. Adrien's hand, the crowd's gasp, the cold marble floor. Finally she asked, "Why did you help me, Nathan? Really?" He leaned against the marble island, his tone even. "Because I know what it's like to be destroyed by Adrien Vaughn. I watched him ruin people. Men who trusted him, women who loved him. You just happened to be both." Elena's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "So you're saying I'm one of his victims?" Nathan shook his head. "No, I'm saying you're the only one still standing." She looked out the window again. The skyline reflected in her eyes, sharp, metallic, unyielding. Somewhere out there, Adrien was probably sipping champagne with Clara, pretending the world still worshipped him. "Do you ever stop him?" she whispered. Nathan's jaw clenched. "Once, but he bought his way out of everything. That's what Adrien does, until someone hits him where it hurts." Elena turned. "And where's that? His reputation, his empire, his illusion of control." He walked toward the coffee table and picked up a slim black folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, screenshots, and printed emails. "This," he said, handing it to her, "is what he doesn't want anyone to see. Shell companies, bribes, the things he hides behind charity galas and billion-dollar smiles." Elena flipped through the pages, her eyes widening with each revelation. "You've been collecting this for years, waiting for the right reason to use it." His gaze locked on hers. "Now I have one." Her breath caught. For the first time, anger burned hotter than grief. "He thinks I'm weak." "Good," Nathan said. "Let him." Elena placed the folder on the counter, her movements deliberate. "If I do this, if I fight back, I want to do it my way." Nathan smiled faintly. "Then you'll need more than anger. You'll need allies." The word echoed in the air like a promise. Allies. Outside, the sun climbed higher, washing over the skyline, over the buildings Adrien once boasted he owned. Elena took a long sip of coffee. The bitterness grounded her. "I don't want revenge," she said softly. "I want justice." Nathan nodded. "Then it starts here." He handed her a sleek MacBook Pro, the screen lighting up with a spreadsheet of names, board members, investors, journalists. "Everyone who's ever helped Adrien lie," he said, "and everyone who's waiting for him to fall." Elena's fingers hovered over the keys, her heartbeat steadied. Somewhere inside, the broken wife began to fade, and the woman Adrien had underestimated began to breathe. Nathan turned toward the window. "By tonight," he said, "he'll know you're still alive." Elena closed the laptop, her voice low but certain. "Good," she said. "Let the world remember my name." Morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse glass, spilling across polished marble and half-empty coffee cups. The world outside seemed impossibly calm compared to the storm brewing in every news outlet across New York. Nathan placed a folded newspaper on the table. The bold black headline screamed, "Billionaire's wife suffers emotional breakdown at charity gala." Beneath it, a photo of Elena on the marble floor. Her hand outstretched, her face twisted in pain, was frozen forever under the harsh flash of camera bulbs. The article twisted every truth. She'd attacked her husband, she was unstable, the pregnancy rumor was unconfirmed. Elena's stomach turned. She pushed the paper away as if it burned. "He did this," she whispered. Nathan nodded grimly. "Adrien owns half the media in this city. He called in favors before dawn. The narrative's already out. You're the villain." Her eyes filled, not with tears this time, but rage. "He destroyed our baby, and now he wants to destroy my name. Nathan slid his MacBook Pro across the table, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. Then we take it back. He opened a folder labeled Crisis Control. Rows of files appeared. Press contacts, PR firms, lawyers, digital evidence. I've been watching him for years, he said. He controls the story. But now, you tell it. Elena scrolled through the documents. There were photos of Adrien and Clara DeWitt at the Hamptons villa, invoices for private jet flights billed to Vaughn Holdings, even transcripts of phone calls Nathan had legally recorded. Every piece, a fracture in Adrien's perfect facade. He's been funneling company funds through shell charities, Nathan explained. He thinks no one will ever link them because they're under Clara's name. Elena looked up, her expression sharpening. Then we link them. For a moment, the air shifted, the silence before a storm. Nathan leaned back, studying her. You'll need an image consultant, someone who can turn you from scandal to sympathy. There's a firm on Fifth Avenue called Callahan and Ross. They rebuild reputations for people even more broken than billionaires. Elena gave a small, defiant laugh. So, we rebuild mine. He smiled faintly. Exactly. She picked up the newspaper again, smoothing the creased headline with steady hands. For years, I let him define me, Mrs. Vaughn, the quiet wife, the accessory on his arm. But this, she tapped the photo, this is the last time he gets to write my story. Nathan closed his laptop, his tone low. The moment you speak, the city will listen. They loved you once. They'll love you again, but you have to be ready for war. Elena rose, walking toward the window. The Manhattan skyline glittered like a promise, sharp and untouchable. Her reflection merged with the buildings. Fragile? Yes, but fierce. I used to believe in love, she murmured. Now, I believe in truth. Behind her, Nathan folded the newspaper neatly, his eyes fixed on her silhouette. Truth is more expensive than love, he said quietly, but it's worth more. Elena turned, determination replacing grief. Then let's make him pay full price. As she spoke, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message was short. You don't know me, Mrs. Vaughn, but I know what he did. Meet me tonight. The River Cafe, 8 p.m. Elena looked up, her pulse quickening. Nathan saw the screen and smiled without humor. Looks like someone else just switched sides. Outside, the city roared to life. Yellow cabs, sirens, the heartbeat of power and vengeance. And for the first time since the night of the gala, Elena Vaughn felt something stronger than pain. Purpose. The afternoon light slanted across the penthouse, painting long streaks of gold over the glass table. The city below buzzed in a familiar rhythm. Traffic, ambition, greed. Elena sat by the window, her mind still tangled with the text message from last night. Meet me tonight, the River Cafe, 8 p.m. Nathan insisted on going with her, but she had refused. If this is a trap, I'll face it myself, she'd said. Now, as she sipped her Starbucks coffee, she wondered if courage and recklessness were the same thing. At precisely 8 p.m., she walked into the River Cafe, the city skyline glittering across the East River. The waiter led her to a private booth where a man in a navy suit sat waiting, posture crisp, confidence radiating from every movement. Elena Vaughn, he said with a polite smile. I wasn't sure you'd come. Who are you? She asked, her tone guarded. He slid a business card across the table. Miles Harrington, CEO, Harrington Tech Group. Her brow furrowed. You're Adrien's partner. Was, he corrected smoothly. Until last week, we had irreconcilable differences. He signaled for 2 glasses of water. The waiter vanished. Elena, he continued, lowering his voice, I know what Adrien did at the gala, and I know he's paying journalists to bury what really happened. She froze. How could you possibly know that? Miles reached into his briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope sealed with wax. Because I paid one of them to tell me. He slid the envelope toward her. Inside is everything. Bank transfers, emails, contracts signed under shell companies, proof that Adrien used company funds to buy silence. Elena stared at the letter as if it might explode. Why are you giving this to me? Miles smiled thinly. Because he did to me what he did to you. He stole my company's AI patent, transferred it to his holding firm, and left me to take the fall when regulators came knocking. You were his wife, I was his friend. We were both disposable. The words hit her like thunder. So this is revenge, he shrugged. Justice, same language, different tone. Elena's pulse quickened as she opened the envelope. Inside, rows of documents and printed bank logs glared up at her. Her breath caught when she saw familiar signatures. Adrien's looping cursive, his authorization stamps. The evidence was irrefutable. He built his empire on deceit, Miles said. But every empire eventually cracks. You just need to know where to hit it. Elena looked up, her hands trembling. And where do I hit? Miles leaned forward. The board of Vaughn Holdings is already restless. They've seen the headlines. They hate bad publicity more than they love loyalty. I can introduce you to someone. A man inside the board who still believes in you. Her chest tightened. You'd risk everything for this? Miles smirked. I already lost everything. The only thing left is my pride. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Outside the window, the Brooklyn Bridge glittered against the dark water, the city pulsing with unseen power. Elena gathered the papers carefully, sliding them into her purse. If what you say is true, then Adrien won't survive what's coming. Miles stood, buttoning his jacket. That's the idea. He paused, glancing down at her with quiet respect. You're stronger than the man who tried to break you. Don't forget that. As he walked away, Elena exhaled slowly, her reflection flickering in the window. Behind her, the lights of Manhattan shimmered like an army waiting for her command. She whispered to herself, he took my child, my home, my name. Now I'll take his empire. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Nathan. Are you safe? Elena typed back 2 words that made her heart steady for the first time in weeks. More than ever. Rain had washed the city clean by morning, leaving Manhattan glittering beneath a pale winter sun. Inside the penthouse at the Ritz-Carlton residences, Elena stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror, staring at a woman she'd barely recognized. Her skin was pale, her eyes hollow, but behind them, there it was, a flicker of fire. Nathan watched from the doorway, arms folded. You look like someone planning a war, he said softly. She turned, her voice low but steady. That's because I am. On the marble counter lay the evidence Miles Harrington had given her the night before. Bank transfers, shell companies, forged contracts, each document another piece of Adrien Vaughn's crumbling empire. But Elena knew information alone wasn't enough. To fight a billionaire, she had to become something else entirely. Someone unbreakable, unforgettable. Nathan slid his MacBook Pro toward her. Then let's start with your image. Before the world listens to what you have to say, they need to see who you are now. Hours passed. Screens lit the room as Nathan walked her through dossiers of PR strategists, stylists, and crisis consultants. At last, he opened one file marked Fifth Avenue Agency, Callahan Ross. They're the best in the city, he said. They've rebuilt names far worse than Adrien's. Elena hesitated. You mean people like me? No, Nathan corrected. People who didn't deserve a second chance. You do. By afternoon, she was walking through the glass doors of Callahan Ross, her posture straight, her heart pounding. The reception smelled faintly of Chanel No. 5 and ambition. A tall woman in a cream suit greeted her with a practiced smile. Elena Vaughn, the woman said. We've been expecting you. Her name. Spoken without pity, without scorn. It felt powerful again. For hours, she sat under warm studio lights while a team of stylists studied her like an artist examines a canvas. They trimmed her dark hair into a sharp, shoulder-length cut, soft pastels for crisp lines, a Dior blazer in charcoal gray, a silk blouse the color of storm clouds. They left her reflection sharper, her presence colder, but her eyes alive. The lead consultant, Miranda Callahan herself, handed Elena a mirror. What do you see? Elena stared for a long moment. Someone I used to be, and someone I'm not afraid to become again. Miranda nodded approvingly. Then you're ready for the interview. The interview? Elena asked. Tomorrow, with Harper's Weekly. They want your side of the story. You'll get one chance to control the narrative. Don't waste it. When she returned to the penthouse that night, Nathan was waiting with dinner and 2 glasses of wine. How did it go? He asked. Elena smiled faintly, a spark returning to her voice. Tomorrow, the city will see me, not the woman he broke, the woman he built by accident. Nathan raised his glass to the rebirth of Elena Vaughn. They clinked glasses, the sound crisp, like the first crack of thunder before a storm. Later, alone by the window, Elena slipped off her wedding ring and placed it beside the folder of evidence. Her reflection shimmered against the skyline of Central Park West, strong and poised. She whispered to herself, he wanted a headline. I'll give him one. Her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Tomorrow's Harper's Weekly interview has leaked. Adrien's PR team is already spinning it. Be ready. Elena's lips curved into a thin, dangerous smile. I was born ready. Outside, the city lights glimmered like 1,000 watchful eyes, waiting for the Queen's next move. The next evening, the Brooklyn Bridge shimmered above the East River like a crown of lights. Beneath it sat the River Café, a place where power whispered over candlelight and secrets were traded more carefully than gold. Elena arrived in a tailored black Dior suit, her hair swept neatly behind her shoulders. The maitre d' recognized her instantly, but said nothing. Her photo had been splashed across every headline that week. The billionaire's wife speaks out. But tonight, she wasn't here for pity. She was here for strategy. Nathan Cross was already waiting at the table, his back to the city skyline. Beside him sat Miles Harrington, looking sharper than before, a quiet smirk playing at his lips. Gentlemen, Elena greeted, her voice calm but commanding. Let's get to business. Miles leaned forward, lowering his tone. Adrien's running scared. He's bleeding money trying to buy silence. My insider tells me he's preparing to move assets offshore, Switzerland, Dubai, maybe Singapore. Once they're gone, no one will touch him. Elena's jaw tightened. Then we touch him first. Nathan slid a thin black folder across the table. Inside were encrypted emails and financial documents, the kind of proof that could cripple an empire. These came from a whistleblower inside Vaughn Holdings, he explained. Someone who's had enough of Adrien's corruption. Elena flipped through the pages, her heartbeat steady but fast. Who is it? I can't say yet, Nathan said, his voice cautious. They'll reveal themselves when it's time. A waiter approached quietly, pouring Dom Perignon into their glasses. The candlelight flickered, dancing against the polished silverware. To anyone watching, it looked like an elegant dinner between powerful executives. No one would guess they were planning the fall of a billionaire. So, Miles said, taking a sip, what's the next move? Elena closed the folder and looked at them both. Tomorrow morning, my interview goes live. Once the world sees what he did to me and the proof behind it, the board will start to fracture. Vaughn Holdings can't survive another scandal. That's when we hit him where it hurts, his investors. Nathan nodded approvingly. You'll need allies on the inside. Miles smirked. I've already got one. A woman named Sophie Laurent, CEO of Laurent Media Group. Adrien humiliated her once, cost her $1 billion deal. She's been waiting for payback. Elena's eyes narrowed. A woman with power and a reason. Bring her to me. Miles chuckled. I thought you'd say that. For a moment, silence settled between them, the kind that feels like electricity before a storm. Outside the window, rain began to fall, gentle but insistent, rippling across the black surface of the river. Elena leaned back, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. You know what I realized? She said softly. Men like Adrien believe they own the world because people let them. Because women like me stay silent. Nathan met her gaze. Not anymore. The words lingered, solid and sharp. Suddenly, Miles's phone buzzed. He frowned, reading the message. His expression shifted from confidence to alarm. He knows, he whispered. Nathan's eyes snapped up. What do you mean, he knows? Miles turned the screen toward them. A text from an unknown number. You think you can plot against me over dinner? Say hello to my friends at the River Cafe's security cameras. Elena froze. Her pulse thundered. She looked around the restaurant. Tiny red dots glimmered discreetly in the corners, watching, recording. Nathan swore under his breath. He's always a step ahead. Elena's voice, however, stayed calm. Then let him watch, she said. Let him see what fear looks like when it finally turns around. She stood, adjusting her blazer. The reflection of the bridge lights danced in her eyes, no longer broken but burning. Nathan tossed a tip on the table. Time to go. As they stepped into the cold night, the wind carried the scent of rain and reckoning. Across the river, the lights of Vaughn Tower glowed like a warning. Elena looked up, her voice barely a whisper. Enjoy your view, Adrien. It's the last time you'll look down on me. The morning after the River Cafe incident, Manhattan woke under a slate-gray sky. The headlines still pulsed with Elena Vaughn's name, half scandal, half redemption. Her interview had gone viral overnight. Millions watched as she spoke with poise and quiet fury, detailing the truth Adrien had buried for years. At the Ritz-Carlton penthouse, Elena stood before the window, watching the storm roll over Central Park. Nathan paced behind her, phone pressed to his ear. Yes, I understand, he said sharply. Lock down every server at Crossbuild. If Adrien accessed those security feeds, he'll try to trace them back to us. He hung up and turned toward her. He's scared. That's good. But he's also cornered. That's when men like Adrien become dangerous. Elena's gaze didn't waver from the skyline. Then we need someone who's not afraid of him. A knock at the door interrupted them. Miles Harrington stepped in, his trench coat dripping with rain. She's here, he said. And trust me, Adrien's terrified of her. Behind him entered Sophie Laurent, CEO of Laurent Media Group, the woman who once controlled half of New York's news cycle. She was in her late 30s, poised and magnetic, dressed in a white Chanel coat that contrasted the storm outside. The click of her Louboutin heels echoed against the marble floor like punctuation marks. Elena Vaughn, she said, removing her gloves. You've caused quite the earthquake. Elena turned, studying her. And you've survived one. I read what Adrien did to you, sabotaged your merger with Lion Broadcasting, cost you $800 million. Sophie smiled without warmth. Oh, I didn't just survive, I learned. She took a seat, crossing her legs gracefully. And I've been waiting for the perfect moment to return the favor. Miles poured coffee for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time we made this alliance official. Nathan nodded. 3 CEOs, 1 goal, to end Adrien Vaughn. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Careful, gentlemen. We're not here for gossip. We're here for results. She turned to Elena. You've already won public sympathy. The next step is precision. We dismantle him from the inside. His investors, his board, his reputation. I'll control the narrative. You two control the damage. Elena leaned forward. And what do you get out of this? Sophie smiled, her lipstick flawless. Justice and front-page rights to the biggest corporate downfall in a decade. Nathan chuckled softly. That's fair. For the next hour, they mapped out their plan over steaming cups of Starbucks Reserve. Sophie's assistant delivered encrypted files from her newsroom, confidential documents, photos, transcripts from anonymous insiders. Adrien's been laundering money through charities again, she explained. But there's something new. An offshore account in the Caymans under Clara DeWitt's name. If we expose that, it'll look like embezzlement. Elena frowned. He'll bury us before we publish. Sophie's smile widened. He'll try. But I don't print stories. I drop bombs. Nathan looked between them. If we do this, we need to be synchronized. The leak, the media storm, the board takeover, everything must hit in one day. Miles tapped the table thoughtfully. And that day should be when Vaughn Holdings announces its annual earnings. Maximum exposure. Elena's pulse quickened. That's next Friday. Perfect, Sophie said, rising. By then, my network will have the story ready, your evidence verified, and the world waiting to watch a billionaire crumble. She walked to the door, her presence commanding. Elena, she said over her shoulder, the moment this begins, there's no going back. Once the truth is out, you'll never be the same woman again. Elena met her gaze, unflinching. That's the point. Sophie's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. Then let's destroy him beautifully. As she left, thunder rumbled across the city. Miles looked at Nathan. You think we can trust her? Nathan's eyes followed the door closing. No, he said, but that's what makes her useful. Elena glanced down at the documents on the table, her reflection mirrored in the glossy pages. Let her use me if she wants, she said softly. As long as Adrien burns first. Outside, lightning flashed over Manhattan, illuminating 3 names that would soon shake Wall Street. Vaughn, Cross, and Laurent. Friday morning arrived, bright and brittle, the kind of Manhattan dawn that makes glass towers glitter like knives. Vaughn Holdings had scheduled its quarterly earnings call for 9 a.m., and the entire financial world would be listening. Investors, analysts, hedge funds, they all planned to measure Adrien Vaughn's empire by the numbers he delivered. He expected applause. He expected boosts. He did not expect an earthquake. At 8:45 a.m., Sophie Laurent's newsroom hummed like a beehive. Producers moved with precise choreography behind glass, eyes fixed on monitors tuned to Bloomberg, CNBC, and the live feed rolling on Laurent Media's homepage. Sophie, in a simple black suit and a Mont Blanc pen tucked in her coat pocket, stood at the center of the storm. Her team cued the embargoed file, the dossier that would become the lead story across multiple platforms. Across town, cameras on Park Avenue centered on Vaughn Tower. Traders at a dozen firms refreshed their tickers, waiting for the opening bell. Nathan Cross watched from a private conference room, fingers tightening around a coffee cup. Miles Harrington sat beside him, expression unreadable. On a table between them, a slim laptop glowing with a live feed of Sophie's piece pending publication. At precisely 8:59 a.m., Sophie hit publish. The headline detonated across the internet. Exclusive, Vaughn Holdings under investigation. Shell accounts, offshore transfers, and charity funds redirected. The first paragraph laid out the evidence in cold surgical detail. Wire transfers to accounts under Clara DeWitt's name, invoices for private jets billed to Vaughn Holdings, contracts signed with shell companies tied to Cayman accounts. Embedded videos showed internal memos. Tagged sources confirmed whistleblowers inside the company. Phones exploded. Notifications cascaded. CNBC interrupted programming. The ticker turned red. Adrien Vaughn, who had been in the boardroom rehearsing his polished optimism, watched his phone light up like a fuse. His jaw hardened. For a moment he stood frozen, a billionaire realizing the ground beneath him was no longer solid. He barked orders into the phone, calling his PR team and legal counsel. Control the narrative. Threaten a suit. Say the documents are fake. His voice sounded small in the cavernous room. But the evidence Sophie had curated was meticulous. Miles's forensic team had cross-checked every transfer. Nathan's insiders had supplied email chains, and Elena's own statements provided context that made the numbers human. A pregnant wife pushed to a marble floor, a husband who lied publicly while laundering funds privately. Within 20 minutes, stock traders had initiated panic selling. Vaughn Holdings stock plunged, dropping 10, then 15%. Hedge funds that had once queued to invest now dialed emergency calls to their legal departments. Anchor voices on Bloomberg and CNBC pivoted from polite commentary to exasperated analysis. This could be catastrophic, one said. We're seeing a classic confidence collapse. Board members gathered in a flurry, faces pale under the fluorescent lights. Phones rang into voicemail, advisors texted, some internal allies sent curt messages. We need transparency now. Others were blunter. Protect yourself. Meanwhile, Sophie scheduled an immediate live interview with Elena on Laurent Media. Nathan coordinated a press release naming an internal audit and requesting a temporary freeze on certain executive privileges. Miles prepared a preemptive motion to convene a special shareholder meeting. The plan the three had rehearsed for weeks now moved with the precision of a military strike. Adrien's team unleashed countermeasures. Lawyers threatened defamation suits, PR pushed out spin pieces, and a paid influencer tried to discredit Sophie's sources. But the story's strands were interconnected. Attacking one thread only made the rest tighten. Social media multiplied the outrage. #Vaughn exposed trended globally. In the heart of the chaos, Elena composed herself. She sat before Sophie's cameras with the confidence Nathan had helped rebuild. She spoke not as a wounded wife, but as a witness to truth. Her voice clear, the city skyline behind her like a jury. As trading frenzied on screens and cables lit up with breaking updates, a single chilling text arrived on Miles's phone. He read it quickly, his expression shifting from triumph to alarm. You think this is enough? He has one more card. He's not alone. The three CEOs glanced at each other. For the first time since they began, doubt crept in. Their strike had landed, but the enemy was not yet defeated. Outside, Vaughn Tower's lights blinked defiantly against a sky now full of helicopters and headlines. Inside, Wall Street watched the empire begin to crumble and wondered which piece would fall next. By Monday morning, New York was electric with scandal. Vaughn Holdings had lost 27% of its market value in 48 hours, and whispers of bankruptcy began swirling down Wall Street like a contagion. Reporters camped outside the company's glass tower, shouting questions at every executive who dared step out. Inside, however, the real war was taking place. One floor below Adrien Vaughn's private office, in the boardroom where loyalty had begun to rot. The room was a monument to excess. A 40-foot mahogany table, Rolex clocks synced to London and Singapore, and a panoramic view of the skyline Adrien believed he owned. But now that skyline stared back like judgment. Adrien entered with his legal team trailing behind him, his once immaculate confidence replaced by a faint tremor. "Gentlemen," he began, his baritone strained, "you've all seen the false reports. We'll contain this within the week." The board members exchanged glances. None smiled. At the far end sat Arthur Leeds, the company's oldest investor, a man whose opinion carried weight like scripture. He leaned back, voice quiet but cutting. "Contain it? Adrien, your wife went on live television with proof. Stockholders are pulling out by the hour. This isn't a rumor, it's a reckoning." Adrien's jaw flexed. "Those documents were fabricated. I'm assembling a forensic team too," Arthur interrupted. "Enough. The evidence came from inside, someone close to you." Silence. Adrien's gaze swept the table, eyes narrowing. "Which one of you?" No one spoke, but across the glass wall, in the reflection of the skyline, a shadow moved. Miles Harrington, standing in the observation lounge with his phone pressed discreetly to the glass. Nathan's voice came through the earpiece. "Keep recording. Every second counts." Downstairs, Elena waited in a black SUV with tinted windows, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Do you think he'll explode?" she asked softly. Nathan's voice over the phone was calm. "Oh, he'll do more than that. He'll confess to something he can't undo." Back in the boardroom, Adrien slammed his palm on the table, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "Do you all forget who made this company? Without me, Vaughn Holdings would still be a boutique firm in Midtown." Arthur folded his arms. "Without you, it might still have a soul." A murmur rippled through the room. Adrien's eyes blazed. "You think you can vote me out? You don't have the shares for that." But they did. Nathan's quiet acquisitions through shell corporations had shifted ownership weeks before. Miles sent a single text to Nathan. "It's time." Arthur cleared his throat. "Effective immediately, we're calling for a shareholder vote to remove Adrien Vaughn as CEO. Pending legal investigation, you're suspended." Adrien laughed, disbelieving. "You can't." But the laughter cracked midway. He saw it then. Signatures on the digital screen flashing before him, over 50%, enough to end him. "You're making a mistake," he hissed, voice shaking. "You'll regret this." Arthur's tone was cold. "We already regret trusting you." Outside, Elena's phone buzzed. Nathan texted, "It's done, he's finished." She exhaled shakily, a tear sliding down her cheek, not of sorrow but release. "So this is justice," she whispered. Inside the tower, Adrien stood motionless as the boardroom emptied, his empire collapsing in silence. The panoramic window reflected a man stripped bare, not a king, but a criminal awaiting judgment. Miles kept the camera rolling until Adrien turned toward it, realizing the betrayal too late. His mouth formed a single word, "You," before he lunged for the glass door. Security stepped in. By nightfall, the footage would reach Laurent Media. By morning, every network in America would play it under one chilling headline: Adrien Vaughn removed as CEO amid corporate coup. And as the lights in Vaughn Tower dimmed, Elena whispered from miles away, "You wanted control, Adrien. Now watch what happens when you lose it." Outside, thunder cracked above Manhattan, not from the storm, but from the empire that had finally fallen. By the next morning, the world knew. Adrien Vaughn was out. The news ran across every major outlet: CNBC, Bloomberg, The Wall Street Journal. Photos of him leaving Vaughn Tower, flanked by security, replaced the sleek magazine covers that had once worshipped his name. But for all the chaos outside, the real dagger waited much closer to home. In a penthouse across town, Clara DeWitt, Adrien's lover, poured herself a glass of champagne at 9 in the morning. Her silk robe shimmered under the Manhattan sunlight, but her smile was brittle. On the TV, a commentator said, "Sources confirm Vaughn Holdings' CEO was voted out following internal corruption leaks. The board is expected to launch a full investigation." She muted the television and muttered, "Poor baby, they finally caught you." The door slammed open. Adrien stormed in, rage radiating from every movement. His tie was loosened, his eyes wild. "You," he shouted. "You told them." "Don't play dumb. I know it was you." Clara blinked, setting her glass down carefully. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." Adrien's voice cracked with fury. "Someone leaked those documents, and you were the only one with access to my private server." She laughed softly, almost pityingly. "You gave me access, remember? You said trust was the foundation of love." Adrien grabbed her wrist. "Don't test me, Clara." Her expression hardened. "Don't touch me again." She pulled free and stepped back. "You used me. You thought I didn't see it, but I did. You paraded me around like a trophy and promised me the world, while you moved your money into accounts with my name on them." Adrien froze. "What?" Oh, you didn't think I'd notice? Clara's tone sharpened, her eyes glinting. The transfers, the fake charities. Do you know what happens if I get audited? I go to prison for your crimes. He tried to recover, voice low, almost pleading. Clara, listen, I can fix this. We just need to… She cut him off, smirking. You can't fix anything. You're finished. And I'm not going down with you. She crossed to her desk, pulling out a small silver USB drive. You made one mistake, Adrien. You taught me how you hide your lies. So I made copies. Every transaction, every fake signature, every transfer you blamed on me. It's all here. Adrien's face drained of color. You wouldn't dare. I already did. Her phone buzzed. She turned it toward him. The screen showed a message thread from Sophie Laurent. Transfer complete. Expect payment by noon. Stay safe. Adrien stumbled back. You sold me out. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. No, I saved myself. She walked past him, calm and deliberate, heels clicking against marble. You know what the funniest part is? She said, glancing over her shoulder. I didn't even have to lie. I just told them the truth. Adrien's fists clenched. I'll destroy you. Clara smiled, the kind of smile that ends empires. You already did that to yourself. She left him standing there, surrounded by the relics of luxury, a shattered Mont Blanc pen, a spilled bottle of champagne, the faint hum of the city that no longer bowed to him. Later that afternoon, Laurent Media released another video, this time featuring Clara's recorded testimony. Calm, confident, she detailed every illegal transfer, every fake document, every threat. The world watched, riveted. Vaughn lies trended globally within an hour. Investors abandoned the sinking ship. The Department of Justice announced an official investigation. At her penthouse window, Elena watched the report play out. Nathan stood beside her. You didn't expect the mistress to flip, did you? Elena's voice was soft but fierce. No, but I'm glad she did. Adrien built his empire on betrayal. It's only fair it ends the same way. Nathan smiled faintly. You realize this makes her the final witness. He can't run now. Elena nodded, eyes fixed on the skyline. Good. Let him drown in the truth. Across the city, Adrien sat alone in the dark, the TV replaying Clara's calm voice over and over. Each word, another nail in his coffin. And for the first time in his life, the man who once owned everything realized he had nothing left to buy. The courthouse on Center Street, Lower Manhattan, stood like a stone monument to justice, cold, towering, and unbending. Crowds gathered along the marble steps, camera flashes flickering like lightning. Every news outlet in the country was there for the trial. The tabloids had branded the Vaughn scandal, power, lies, and blood. Inside, the corridors smelled of paper and tension. Reporters whispered as Elena Vaughn walked through the metal detectors, flanked by Nathan Cross and Miles Harrington. She wore a tailored white Dior suit, the same color as the hospital sheets she'd once bled on. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Nathan leaned close and whispered, You don't have to speak if it's too much. Elena shook her head. No, I want him to hear me. The courtroom doors opened. Adrien Vaughn sat at the defense table, a shadow of the man he once was. His once perfect hair hung loose. His tailored suit looked too large for his frame. When his eyes met Elena's, there was no arrogance left, only fear masquerading as pride. Judge Whitmore, stern and silver-haired, took her seat. The people versus Adrien Vaughn, she declared. Charges: corporate fraud, embezzlement, perjury, and assault. The words echoed across the chamber. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but that didn't stop the weight of 1,000 eyes. The prosecution began by calling Clara DeWitt to the stand. She stepped up in a sleek black dress, voice steady, eyes forward. Yes, she said, answering the first question. He transferred millions through my accounts without my consent. I confronted him, and he threatened me. Adrien slammed his palm against the table. Liar, the judge's gavel cracked. Mr. Vaughn, control yourself. Clara continued unfazed. He told me, quote, if you talk, I'll make you disappear. So I did the opposite. I talked. Gasps rippled through the room. Adrien buried his face in his hands. Then it was Elena's turn. The bailiff guided her to the witness stand. As she raised her right hand to take the oath, the courtroom fell into utter silence. She sat down, her heartbeat calm, her voice firm. Mrs. Vaughn, the prosecutor said gently, you were present at the charity gala on May 14th? Yes, Elena said. Can you describe what happened? Elena took a deep breath. I went there hoping to save my marriage. I thought Adrien might still have a heart. But when I asked him to stop his affair and come home, he Her voice wavered slightly. He pushed me. I fell. I was 5 months pregnant. The room froze. Even the judge's expression softened. I begged him to stop, Elena continued, tears glistening but her tone unwavering. And he looked down at me like I was something beneath his shoes. That's when I realized he didn't just break me. He erased me. A hush swept through the courtroom. Nathan, watching from the gallery, clenched his fists to hide the emotion rising in his throat. The prosecutor handed her a photo, the infamous shot from the gala, captured by dozens of cameras. Elena looked at it for a moment before placing it face down. "That's not who I am anymore," she said quietly. When her testimony ended, she rose and walked past Adrien. For a moment, their eyes met. Adrien whispered, "You think you've won?" Elena leaned close enough for only him to hear. "No. I think the truth finally did." By the time she stepped outside, the plaza was swarming with reporters. Microphones thrust toward her. Flashes exploded like fireworks. "Mrs. Vaughn, how do you feel?" Elena paused, her white suit glowing in the daylight. "I feel free." Across the street, the bronze scales of justice reflected sunlight over her face, and for the first time in years, she smiled. Inside, Adrien sat motionless as the verdict loomed. His empire had crumbled, his allies gone, his wife reborn. And as Judge Whitmore's gavel struck again, the sound didn't just end a trial, it buried a dynasty. The following morning, Manhattan pulsed with anticipation. News vans lined Wall Street, satellite dishes aimed skyward, their reporters rehearsing live intros. Inside the Wall Street Media Center, every seat was taken. Journalists, investors, even rival CEOs waited for one woman's voice. At exactly 10 a.m., the lights dimmed. The stage backdrop bore a single phrase in silver lettering: "Justice is rebirth." When Elena Vaughn stepped onto the stage, the room fell utterly silent. She wore a tailored black Alexander McQueen suit, sleek, immaculate, unflinching. A single Cartier bracelet shimmered under the spotlights, a reminder of who she used to be and what she had survived. Behind her stood Nathan Cross, Miles Harrington, and Sophie Laurent, the three CEOs whose alliance had exposed Adrien's empire. The murmur of cameras subsided as Elena approached the podium. The microphone captured the faint tremor in her first breath, then steadied as she began to speak. 2 years ago, she said, "I believed love was loyalty. I believed my silence protected my family. I was wrong." She paused, scanning the crowd, faces she'd once known, reporters who'd once written about her charity galas, her designer gowns, her perfect marriage. "The truth is," she continued, "silence only protects the powerful, and the powerful only fear one thing: accountability." A flash erupted from the press pit. Her voice didn't waver. "My husband, Adrien Vaughn, taught me that wealth can buy headlines, but it can't buy integrity. He taught me that fear can control people until one day, it doesn't." The audience leaned in. She unfolded a sheet of paper and placed it on the podium. Legal statements signed by the board of Vaughn Holdings, confirming Adrien's removal and the company's restitution plan. "Vaughn Holdings," she declared, "will no longer be an empire of deception. Effective immediately, we are establishing the Vaughn Reborn Foundation, a non-profit to support women rebuilding their lives after corporate abuse." The announcement ignited a storm of flashes and murmurs. Sophie stepped closer, whispering, "That's the headline." Elena smiled faintly, then looked back to the cameras. "This is not revenge," she said softly. "This is redemption, for every woman told to keep quiet, for every victim told to endure. You are not powerless. You are not invisible. You are enough." Applause erupted. Some reporters stood, clapping. Others wiped tears discreetly behind notepads, but in the back corner, one camera lens focused tighter than the rest, a live stream broadcasting to millions online. Within minutes, the hashtag #JusticeIsRebirth began trending worldwide. Nathan stepped forward next. "We stood by Elena not out of pity," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "We stood by her because truth builds stronger companies than lies ever will. Corporate accountability isn't weakness, it's leadership." Miles added, "For too long, men like Adrien Vaughn used power as a shield. Today, that shield shattered." Reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Vaughn, what happens to Adrien now?" Elena hesitated only for a moment. "The law will decide his fate. I've already decided mine." "What is that?" another called out. She met the camera head-on, eyes fierce and calm. "To live free and never let fear write my story again." The applause swelled again, echoing through the chamber. Outside, the streets of Lower Manhattan buzzed with energy. Banners appeared on digital billboards, showing Elena's face beside the quote, "Justice is rebirth." Inside the media center, Sophie turned to her quietly. "You realize you just changed everything." Elena glanced at her allies, Nathan, Miles, Sophie, each nodding, their revenge now complete, their integrity intact. "No," she replied, voice steady. "We just reminded the world what truth looks like." That night, every major network replayed her speech. In living rooms across America, women watched her rise and whispered to themselves, "If she can, I can." And somewhere in a prison holding cell, Adrien Vaughn watched the same broadcast, the screen flickering in the dark. His wife's voice echoing, louder than his empire ever was. The day after the press conference, New York's skyline gleamed like a crown under sunlight, polished, triumphant, and buzzing with whispers. The markets opened with chaos. Vaughn Holdings, once an untouchable empire, was now a wounded animal bleeding on Wall Street. Analysts spoke in hushed tones about corporate collapse, about the woman who had turned truth into strategy. Inside a sleek glass tower on Park Avenue, Elena sat at the head of a long table, flanked by Nathan Cross, Miles Harrington, and Sophie Laurent. It was the same kind of boardroom where she'd once been humiliated. Only now, she wasn't the silent wife in the corner. She was the one in control. Nathan slid a stack of papers toward her. "All signatures are in. As of this morning, Crossbuild and Harrington Tech hold 40% of Vaughn Holdings shares. Laurent Media controls another 20%. Elena's hand hovered over the documents. "And the remaining 40%? "Owned by minor shareholders who are desperate for stability," Sophie said, adjusting her Cartier watch. "Once you announce your leadership, they'll follow you." Elena looked around the table, her reflection gleaming in the polished surface. "Then let's make it official." Nathan smiled. "Welcome to your new empire." He handed her a sleek black Mont Blanc pen. The same model Adrien once used to sign the documents that stripped her of everything. Elena turned it slowly between her fingers before signing her name. Bold, deliberate, final. Elena Vaughn, chairwoman and CEO, Vaughn Reborn Group. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the scratch of the pen. Then Nathan broke into a grin. "It's done." Sophie leaned back in her chair. "You realize what this means, don't you? You didn't just win back your name, you took his legacy." Elena looked out through the glass wall toward the skyline. "No," she said softly. "I built my own." Miles tapped the digital screen on the wall, pulling up a slide labeled Project Rebirth. "Here's our launch plan. Dissolve all of Adrien's shell companies, rebrand Vaughn Holdings into a transparent public entity, and donate a portion of profits to the foundation you created. It'll be the biggest corporate restructuring in New York history." Elena nodded, calm and confident. "Make it happen." Her phone buzzed, an incoming message from an unknown number. "You took my company. Enjoy it while it lasts." "Adrien," she set the phone face down and said quietly, "He's watching. Let him." Nathan leaned closer. "He's powerless now, Elena." "Powerless men are the most dangerous," she replied. "But I'm not afraid of him anymore." Later that afternoon, the New York Stock Exchange lit up with the announcement. Vaughn Reborn Group officially acquires Vaughn Holdings. The ticker symbol VRG began climbing within minutes. Investors who'd abandoned Adrien now scrambled to return. News anchors called it the comeback of the decade. That night, a celebration dinner was held at the Ritz-Carlton's rooftop lounge. The air smelled of rain and victory. Glasses clinked, laughter floated above the city's hum. But amid the joy, Elena remained thoughtful, gazing at the skyline that had once symbolized her downfall. Nathan joined her at the balcony. "You did it," he said quietly. "You own what once owned you." Elena smiled faintly, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "No one owns me anymore, Nathan." He handed her a crystal flute of champagne. "To justice?" She shook her head. "To rebirth." They toasted under the glittering Manhattan night. Across town, Adrien watched the financial news from a cheap hotel room, the empire he'd built now bearing the name of the woman he'd tried to erase. His reflection in the window looked nothing like power, only the ghost of a man consumed by greed. As the anchor on screen said the words, "Elena Vaughn, the woman who turned pain into power," Adrien hurled the remote across the room. The glass shattered, leaving him alone with the sound of his own destruction. Back at the Ritz, Elena whispered to herself, "Let him rage. I'm done living in his shadow. The city below pulsed with light, not for Adrien Vaughn, but for the woman who had replaced him. Rain hammered the streets of Manhattan like a punishment. The city, always awake, seemed to hold its breath as Adrien Vaughn stepped out of a black sedan in front of the United States District Court. Cameras exploded in his face, their flashes slicing through the mist. The man who once ruled Wall Street now looked hollow. His Armani suit wrinkled, his cufflinks mismatched, the arrogance that had once defined him replaced by something darker, desperation. "Mr. Vaughn, any comment on the fraud charges?" shouted a reporter from the New York Times. Adrien didn't answer. He just kept walking, his jaw clenched, escorted by two silent attorneys in charcoal coats. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Rows of journalists whispered behind notepads, their pens hungry for history. On the prosecution's table sat boxes labeled Vaughn Holdings Evidence, classified financial documents. One of those boxes bore the neat handwriting of Sophie Laurent, proof of how deep the betrayal ran. Across the aisle sat Elena Vaughn, composed, untouchable, in a cream Chanel suit. Nathan Cross and Miles Harrington flanked her like pillars. She didn't look at Adrien when he entered. She didn't have to. He was already defeated. Judge Whitmore entered, her gavel striking wood. "Court is now in session." The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, today we present irrefutable evidence that Adrien Vaughn knowingly laundered over $200 million through fraudulent charities and offshore accounts." The screens flickered on. Spreadsheets, bank records, shell company maps connecting New York to the Caymans to Dubai. The courtroom gasped as the prosecutor pointed at one name, Clara DeWitt Trust. Adrien's hands trembled. Clara's betrayal was complete. Elena's gaze flickered briefly, her expression unreadable. She remembered the night he'd told her she was nothing, the night he'd kicked her to the marble floor, the night her child was lost. Now he was the one crawling. When the judge asked for a plea, Adrien stood, his voice cracking. "Not guilty. I was misled by my team." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor smiled thinly. "Then perhaps your team should have also signed your offshore wire transfers?" Gasps. Adrien's composure snapped. "You don't understand," he shouted. "This is all her fault." He pointed at Elena, finger shaking. "She turned them against me. She used my name." The judge's gavel thundered. "Enough!" Elena didn't move. Her silence was power. The world had watched him control every narrative until this one. After hours of testimony, the defense crumbled. Nathan's recordings of Adrien's threats, Miles's documentation of falsified reports, Sophie's investigative footage, each piece stacked higher until Adrien's empire resembled a collapsing skyscraper. When the verdict finally came, Judge Whitmore's voice echoed like a hymn. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Adrien Vaughn, guilty on all counts." A hush swept through the courtroom. Adrien's knees gave way, the weight of his sins finally dragging him down. The bailiff stepped forward, snapping the cuffs around his wrists. Elena watched quietly as the man who had once towered above her was escorted away. His eyes found hers one last time, wild, pleading. But she felt nothing. Outside, thunder rolled over the courthouse steps as reporters surged forward. Nathan guided her through the chaos, the flashbulbs bright enough to rival lightning. "How do you feel, Mrs. Vaughn?" one shouted. Elena paused, her voice steady. "I feel closure." They moved through the rain toward the waiting Mercedes S-Class, its black surface gleaming like justice itself. As the door closed, she looked out through the glass at the courthouse where Adrien disappeared from view. Nathan broke the silence. "It's over." Elena shook her head gently. "No," she said. "It's just the beginning of peace." Miles leaned forward, smiling faintly. "You won, Elena. Completely." She stared out at the city, the skyline that had once symbolized power, now reclaimed by truth. "No," she whispered. "We all did." And as the rain softened, a single beam of sunlight pierced through the clouds, striking the courthouse steps where Adrien Vaughn had fallen. The same place where his wife had finally risen. The storm had passed, but Manhattan still glistened with the residue of rain, puddles reflecting streetlights, skyscrapers mirrored in wet glass. The city that once whispered Adrien Vaughn's name now spoke another. Elena. It had been 3 days since the guilty verdict. Vaughn Holdings was reborn under a new name, Vaughn Reborn Group, its stock recovering, investors returning, and the headlines celebrating the woman who beat the billionaire. But victory, Elena learned, came with silence. She sat alone on the balcony of her Ritz-Carlton penthouse, wrapped in a wool coat, the skyline spread before her like an empire of ghosts. Below, the river shimmered under the moonlight, calm at last. The world saw triumph. She felt the echo of every wound that had led her here. Nathan Cross entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You haven't slept," he said gently. Elena smiled faintly. "Neither have you." He joined her, setting the mugs on the glass table between them. For a while, neither spoke. The city hummed softly, car horns, distant laughter, the sound of life moving forward. Nathan finally broke the silence. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Elena looked down at the lights of Central Park, her voice calm. "For years, I only thought about surviving. Then, I thought about justice. Now, I just want peace." Nathan nodded. "You've earned it." Elena exhaled, her breath visible in the cold air. "It doesn't feel like winning, though. It feels like closing a book I never wanted to write." He studied her quietly. "Maybe because your story isn't over yet." Inside the suite, the television played muted coverage of the trial's aftermath. A reporter's caption read, "Adrien Vaughn awaits sentencing, facing up to 25 years. Elena glanced at it briefly, then muted the screen completely. She no longer needed to hear his name. Instead, she focused on a letter resting beside her, a handwritten note on thick stationery. It was from Sophie Laurent. "You changed the game," it read. "You didn't just expose him. You exposed how men like him operate, in boardrooms, marriages, and silence. The world needed to see that. Don't disappear, Elena. Women need a voice like yours." Elena folded the letter carefully, eyes softening. Nathan noticed. "She's right, you know. You could build something real from this, something beyond business." "I'm tired of fighting," Elena said softly, "but maybe I can build something healing." He smiled. "Then do it." A moment of quiet stretched between them, heavy but peaceful. For the first time in years, Elena didn't feel like prey or survivor. She felt human again. Her phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number. For a second, her heart skipped, but when she opened it, her lips curved upward. It was from Clara DeWitt. "He's gone. Thank you for setting us all free." Elena typed back one sentence. "Freedom was always ours. We just had to claim it." She put the phone away and turned to Nathan. "I want to reopen the foundation. Make it global, not just for women like me, for anyone silenced by power." Nathan raised his mug in a quiet toast, "To the beginning of peace." Elena smiled, the city lights flickering across her face. "To peace," she echoed. The wind carried her words into the skyline, where glass towers glowed like stars. Somewhere far below, the world buzzed with noise, reporters, traders, whispers of her name. But up here, above it all, she finally found stillness. As the clock struck midnight, Elena looked out across Manhattan, the city that had witnessed her fall and rise, and whispered, "I'm finally free." And for the first time in years, she believed it. The winter air carried a soft chill across the East River, the kind that bit gently at the skin but made every breath feel alive. The Brooklyn Bridge glowed above, its lights shimmering like a golden spine against the night. Inside the River Cafe, the piano played a slow, wistful tune, the same melody that had filled the air the night Elena first plotted her revenge. Tonight, she came not as a woman seeking justice, but as someone ready to reclaim peace. Dressed in an elegant navy Dior coat, Elena entered quietly. The maitre d' recognized her immediately, but said nothing, only offering a respectful nod. The same table by the window was waiting, the one where she had once sat across from Nathan and Miles, trembling but determined. Now she moved with calm certainty. The war was over. Moments later, Nathan Cross arrived, a hint of warmth in his smile as he joined her. "Back where it all started," he said, setting his Mont Blanc pen on the table beside the menu. Elena looked out at the water, where the bridge's reflection rippled across the current. "I wanted to see it one more time," she said softly. "The night I thought I was powerless. Turns out it was the night I became free." A waiter poured them both glasses of Chateau Margaux, the deep red wine catching the glow of the candles. Around them, laughter rose from other tables. Ordinary people living ordinary moments. For Elena, that ordinariness felt like luxury. Nathan leaned forward. "How's the foundation?" Elena smiled faintly. "We're expanding. The donations are pouring in. Women from all over the world are reaching out, telling their stories, rebuilding their lives." He nodded approvingly. You've built something bigger than revenge. She hesitated, swirling her wine. Revenge was never the goal. It was just the road I had to take to find myself again. For a moment, they sat in silence, the kind that needed no words. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, silent flakes drifting over the water. Nathan broke the quiet. I read Adrien's sentencing report. 25 years, minimum security. He's trying to appeal. Elena's gaze didn't waver. He can appeal the verdict, not the truth. That part's final. Nathan smiled gently. You sound lighter. I am, she admitted. For the first time, I'm not defined by what he did to me. I'm defined by what I survived. Their food arrived. Seared salmon, winter vegetables, a dish she remembered ordering on the night her life had changed. It felt poetic somehow. The same table, the same meal, but a completely different woman. Halfway through dinner, Miles Harrington appeared, coat draped over his arm. Hope I'm not late, he said with his signature grin. Couldn't miss the reunion. Nathan laughed. You're right on time. Miles poured himself a glass of wine. I heard about your global expansion. Asia, Europe, impressive. You're not just a CEO now, Elena. You're a movement. Elena chuckled softly. I'm just trying to make the world a little fairer than the one I woke up to 2 years ago. Miles raised his glass. To second chances. Nathan joined. To strength. Elena lifted hers last, her voice quiet but sure. To freedom, the kind no one can take away again. Their glasses clinked, the sound delicate yet profound. Outside, the snow thickened, covering the city in soft white light. For a long while, they sat watching it fall, 3 survivors of one man's greed, now bound by purpose, not pain. When the dinner ended, Elena lingered by the window. The East River shimmered beneath the bridge. She whispered to herself, I forgive him. Not for him, for me. Nathan, hearing her, smiled. That's how you truly win. Elena turned toward the door, her silhouette framed by candlelight and falling snow. The city she once feared now bowed quietly around her. A kingdom rebuilt not by power, but by grace. And as she stepped into the night, the wind carried away the last echoes of Adrien Vaughn's name, leaving behind only one truth. Elena Vaughn had finally come home to herself. Winter melted into spring, and New York slowly shed its frost. The trees of Central Park bloomed pale pink, the air alive with the scent of renewal. Joggers, lovers, and laughter returned to the paths that months ago had been buried in silence. For Elena Vaughn, this park had always been sacred, the one place she could walk without pretending. Years ago, she and Adrien had taken their wedding photos under these same trees. Now she returned alone, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a woman who had rebuilt her own story. A light wind brushed against her long beige Burberry coat as she strolled past Bow Bridge, her heels clicking softly against the cobblestones. A few heads turned. People recognized her, whispering, That's her, the woman who took down Adrien Vaughn. But Elena only smiled politely and kept walking. She no longer lived for their gaze. At the far end of the path near Bethesda Fountain, she spotted a familiar figure waiting. Nathan Cross, dressed in a navy suit, a paper bag of coffee in his hand. You're late, he teased. I wasn't sure I'd come, she replied, accepting the cup. I knew you would, he said. They sat on a bench overlooking the fountain, the city skyline reflecting in the calm water. For a moment, the world felt quiet. No cameras, no shareholders, no chaos. Just 2 people who had fought the same storm and survived. Nathan took a deep breath. Do you ever miss it? The power? Elena shook her head. Power was never real. Respect is. Peace is. That's what I missed. He smiled softly. You sound like someone who finally forgave herself. She turned toward him. For a long time, I blamed myself for trusting him, for staying, for losing the baby. But healing isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting that you still deserved better, even when you didn't believe it. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, admiration in his eyes. You've come a long way, Elena. So have you, she said gently. They sat in companionable silence, watching children play near the fountain. A little girl chased pigeons, her laughter bright and unfiltered. Elena smiled faintly, her eyes softening. Nathan noticed. You're thinking about them, aren't you? The child you lost. Elena nodded slowly. Every day. But it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. I like to think maybe that little soul saved me. Maybe they knew I'd have to walk through fire before I could truly live. Nathan reached over, covering her hand with his. They'd be proud of you. The warmth of his touch grounded her. She turned her palm upward, fingers intertwining with his. Not as an act of romance, but of quiet connection. "Do you think people like us ever get a real second chance?" she asked. He smiled. "You already took yours. You built it yourself." They stood and began walking down the path. Around them, the park buzzed with life. Street musicians strumming guitars, vendors selling Starbucks cups of hot cocoa, couples strolling hand in hand. As they reached the bridge, Elena paused, gazing at the reflection of the skyline shimmering in the water. "It's strange," she murmured. "I used to look at this city and see everything I'd lost. Now I see everything I've found." Nathan stepped beside her. "And what's that?" She turned to him with a gentle smile. "Myself." He laughed quietly. "That's the best revenge there is." Elena's eyes lifted toward the cityscape, the towers, the lights, the endless hum of life. Somewhere out there, her foundation was thriving. Women she'd never met were finding strength in her story. Her pain had become someone else's hope. She took a slow breath, letting the wind lift her hair. "You know," she said, "I think I finally understand what freedom feels like." Nathan nodded. "What's it feel like?" She smiled. "It feels like forgiveness." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting the park in gold, they walked on, not as partners in revenge, but as two souls reborn from ruin. And for the first time since that terrible night at the Plaza Hotel, Adrien Vaughn felt whole again. 2 years later, the skyline of Manhattan had changed. New towers pierced the clouds, old names vanished from billboards, and one name shone brighter than them all: Elena Vaughn. Across the city, the Vaughn Reborn Foundation had grown into an international movement, funding shelters, legal aid, and rehabilitation programs for survivors of abuse and corruption. The woman once silenced by a billionaire had become the voice for thousands who had none. It was a crisp autumn morning when Elena stepped onto the stage at the Plaza Hotel, the same ballroom where her humiliation had once begun. This time, it was filled not with investors and opportunists, but with women from every walk of life. Cameras rolled, not for scandal, but for inspiration. Nathan Cross stood backstage, adjusting the mic on his lapel, watching her with quiet pride. "You ready?" he asked. Elena smiled, serene. "I've been ready my whole life." The chandeliers glittered above her as she took the podium, her reflection shimmering across a sea of faces. The applause faded to a hush. "2 years ago," she began, her voice steady and warm, "I stood in this very room. Not as a speaker, but as a broken woman begging for mercy. I was pushed to the floor, told I was worthless, told that silence would save me, but silence saves no one." She paused, letting the memory hang in the air before continuing. "Today I stand here not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as proof that truth is louder than power." The audience leaned forward. Every camera in the room was fixed on her, yet she spoke as if to one person, the woman she used to be. "I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the past define you. It means standing tall even when the world wants you to kneel." Behind her, a massive screen displayed photos of the foundation's work. Women smiling as they opened new businesses, children reunited with their mothers, courtrooms where justice had finally prevailed. Sophie Laurent stood near the press section, wiping away a tear. Miles Harrington, now a board member of her foundation, gave a quiet nod. Elena continued, her voice soft but commanding. "To every woman who has ever been told she's too emotional, too weak, too broken, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not too much. You are exactly enough." The crowd erupted into applause, a sound that rolled like thunder through the Golden Hall. When it quieted, Elena glanced toward Nathan. Their eyes met, not in romance, but in respect, the kind forged through shared battles and scars. "This city once tried to bury me under its noise," she said. "But I realized something beautiful. Roots grow best in the dark. Every wound, every betrayal was planting something stronger inside me." She smiled faintly. "And now, I bloom." The audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some crying. Reporters called her speech the heartbeat of modern resilience. The video hit 10 million views in 24 hours, translated into a dozen languages. That night, Elena returned to her penthouse, the same one she had once stared out from in despair. She poured herself a cup of Starbucks Reserve coffee, opened her laptop, and watched the replay. But what caught her eye wasn't the speech. It was the faces in the crowd. Faces shining with hope. Nathan joined her, standing quietly at the window. You changed everything, he said. Elena looked out at the glittering skyline. No, she replied softly. I just reminded people they could change themselves. Below, the lights of New York flickered like beating hearts, alive, defiant, free. She raised her cup, whispering to the city that had once broken her, for every woman who thought she couldn't stand again, this is for you. And as dawn began to spill over Manhattan, the woman once defined by pain finally became what she was always meant to be, a legacy. So that's it. The story has come to an end. But you're still here, aren't you? If you've made it this far, maybe something inside this story touched your heart. Maybe a word, a moment, or a truth that felt a little too close to your own. Elena's journey isn't just about revenge or power. It's about healing. It's about standing up after being shattered, forgiving without forgetting, and learning. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the obstacle is the way. Sometimes the very pain that breaks us is the same pain that rebuilds us into something stronger. Life will never be free from betrayal, loss, or heartbreak. But we always have a choice, to stay down or to rise, wiser, calmer, freer. Like the Stoics taught, peace doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from mastering ourselves. So if this story reminded you of your own strength, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Leave a comment below about what part spoke to you most. Hit that like button so more people can find courage too. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel, because we'll keep walking this road of healing and truth together. You're not alone. You never were.